All right, how's it going, everybody? We'll get started in a moment here. But how's everybody doing? Um, last day of the first four, and then we'll get the tournament truly started here. Um, I personally have not put together my brackets yet. I'll do that tonight. I always like to just do it the night before the tournament, or even um, the morning of sometimes if I could wake up early enough on the West Coast here. But yeah, let's get started now. So what we're gonna do in this live stream is just kind of go through the seven strategies that I kind of use to put together my brackets. Um, I've been using these strategies for almost 20 plus years now. And it's always led me to, if I don't win, then at least win money as being part of the top number of people in my pool. Also, in the last 2 years that I put this article out, I have won my pools, and I know that some of you have as well. And so this stuff it works, and so I hope that this tutorial would be helpful for you as you finalize your brackets tonight or tomorrow. Um, and the most important thing actually is to pick your champion and to get that right, and then work backwards from there. That's because hey, what's up, Vince? That's because the champion is your most it's worth the most points, right? Like it's worth 63 points in standard scoring, and the average champion is going to score between 120 and 150 points, maybe 110 to 150. And it's very hard to win a pool without getting the champion right. Um, the only time I've personally ever won a pool without getting it right, like a large pool, is when I got the all four of the final four teams right. Um, and so getting the champion right is the most important thing, and it's worth the most. And then worth the second most is the runner up, and so forth. And so I personally I like to work backwards. Um, get my champion right, and then kind of go backwards from there. So like what people typically do in a pool is they'll select their first round, or they'll go region by region, and then finally the final four. And so yeah, I would uh, um, I kind of work backward instead of going forward. And I know it's like a little bit atypical, but I think that's what works. Um, Vince, would I fade trendy underdogs? Um, I think it depends, right? Like it depends if it's for a pool. It kind of depends on if you think that those underdogs are going to be trendy in your specific pool. Also, it depends on whether you get a multiplier or a point bonus for seeds. And so I would say not necessarily. And also, if depending on the size of your pool, and also how far you're taking the underdogs, it might not really matter too much. Now in betting, if you're gonna bet on the first round and you see a trendy underdog like Charleston might be one, then yeah, I would try and fade it, especially if it's a need, especially or like the 5 seed would be a need, um, or if there's sharp action on the favorite. So yeah, from a pool, so for a pool perspective, not necessarily, but yeah, for a betting perspective, yeah. Um, and so okay, so I like to work backward. Um, Now how do I actually figure out my team? So I like to use models, and also betting numbers. Um, the sharpest book is Pinnacle. Um, Let me see if they're. I think because the games are going on right now, their uh, lines might be down. Yeah, they are. Okay, so what I have done is I've captured it in a few different spots. One is right here, and the other one is in Excel. So I'm going to come back to this, but I like to use um, the Sharp books. I also like to use a few models like 538, ChemPalm, BPI. Um, Torvik is a new one that's been big this year, and so I kind of like to use those ones. I also like to see who the public is gonna has been picking, and then kind of fade them. So, for example, we see in ESPN's who picked whom, which is I think the kind of the best one out there. That a lot of the public is on Bama and also Houston, and so I'm gonna try and avoid picking Bama. And they've actually they were a lot higher earlier this week, but I would avoid picking Bama because if a lot of my pool is on them in a 100-person pool, I might expect to see 20 people on them, and um, whether you finish seventh and you get Bama right or 97th and you completely fail, it really doesn't matter. And so I try and avoid um, a team like Bama. And also, what we see just using this new odds analysis thing that we've put together is that per Pinnacle, um, and I I've updated this actually. I need to upload the new update. Um, so Bama has a 9.1% chance of winning, and they've been picked by this number is a little bit high, but now 18 or 19% of people. And so they're basically overbought or overutilized by like 11 or 10%. And so because of that, I don't really want to get into that thing. I'm going to look for teams that are either not as utilized or that have a higher percentage of actually winning the tournament than what we see. Um, and so yeah, I'll kind of fade the public or at least avoid them. And now what I'll also do, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, is kind of understand who your competition is going to pick. So I use ESPN's Who Picked Who as a guide, but if I'm in LA, then more people are going to be picking UCLA. Or if I'm in a pool with UCLA alumni or something like that. I personally, I'm kind of into kind of bigger pools with some of my friends, some of which went to Michigan and have friends from the Midwest and all that in that pool. And so I know they're going to be on Purdue and maybe Marquette as well. They like to pick the Big Ten teams. And then on the other side, my friends that I'm in a pool on the West Coast with, like in Seattle, they're going to trend with the West Coast teams. Some of them might be UCLA alum or Arizona alum or just be a fan of Gonzaga or something like that. And so they're going to pick those guys. And so I'm going to avoid picking Gonzaga in a pool with my West Coast friends. And I'm going to avoid picking a team like Purdue in the Midwest pool. So or Michigan State to go far or something like that. Um, so yeah, just know kind of who is in your pool and what biases they might have. um, the futures report that's been released now. It's been released in a few different forms. The full report is up on the members portal. There's the email went out as well on social media, and so that's been out. But um, do take that into account as well. And so, for example, this year a liability is Kansas. I don't care what the numbers say. I am not going to take Kansas. And Texas is one that they're going to want to win, and so I'll kind of consider that as well. And I might have a bracket that has Texas in it, and I'm going to avoid Kansas. um, and the Sharps, they're also on some teams, and so I'll look at that as well. So take that into account. Take the betting markets into account as well. And then finally, or actually, I guess not finally, but what I put together here is a historical allocation of the seeds and kind of what to expect from having five brackets. So typically, three number one seeds out of five have won the national title, and then about one of a two seed and a three seed. Now, of course, um, there are the seven seeds like Kentucky, like UConn a few years ago over Kentucky that are going to go on a run or something like that. But this is kind of like the average makeup. And so what I like to do is just make sure that my five pools or five brackets kind of follow this allocation in total. And then of course, as I kind of mentioned, optimize your uh, optimize your bracket for your pool scoring system. And so if there's um, a point multiplier, you're going to want to take that into account. So if I'm, you know, modeling this out or using a Ken Palm model or something like that, I'm going to want to multiply the percentage by the number of points to kind of get an expected points number. Because some pools do um, try and prioritize the earlier rounds versus getting a champion right, and so you just want to take that into account. Or others do have multipliers or adders for upsets, and so you want to make sure that your bracket is kind of optimized for your pool scoring system. So, for example, the pool that I got like the final four right in a few years ago, that one did prioritize getting underdogs right, which is why I kind of went with um, uh, Auburn to make the Final Four as a five seed that year, Texas Tech as a three seed, etc. So, for example, one team just looking at the odds as a four seed that's pretty highly rated by Pinnacle is UConn, and so I might have UConn going far in a pool that uh, gives you a bonus for kind of picking underdogs or lower seeds. And then Vince, just looking over your question now. Yeah, Vince. So that's a good question. So it really depends on how big your pool is. So if you have like a 200 person pool, then or like one like a national pool, for example, then I would try and do that because you would want to try and make up some of these points everywhere else. In a pool like 100 or less, I don't really it doesn't really make a difference in a lot of respect because again it's like it's all about getting the champion right and then as long as I'm kind of fitting this allocation everything is just going to kind of work out for itself. So I don't necessarily go that far in depth in terms of who my competitors are going to be taking in the first round or the second round or something like that. um One question I just wanted to answer really quickly before we move on is well, what happens if I have one bracket? Of course, this allocation is for five, but what happens if you have one? And here's my advice there. First, I would, of course, divide all this by five, and so just make sure that you have all four number ones going onto the second round. Maybe don't pick a 16 or sorry a 15-2 upset. Maybe your champion will be either a 1-2 or a 3 seed. So you want to follow that allocation. Now, one thing I think I should do kind of going forward is put this into like a calculator or something like that where you could pick the number of brackets that you want and it'll kind of it'll spit out uh, the the allocation for your brackets. And so I'll do that for next year. But first, I would just take this, divide it by five, and then now in terms of of who you actually pick. Now the first thing is to ask yourself who your competition is. If you're in a pool in Texas, then I might not take Houston, or again, because Kansas is a liability, I'm not going to take them. And so you just kind of knock out teams. And then what I would do is take a look at the pinnacle odds, and I'm just going to uh, go to the one in Excel here, which is this one, and I'm just going to kind of go down the list, and again see which teams are maybe not as overbought. And so again, like if you're in a pool with a lot of people from Houston, then I won't take them. Alabama's a very overbought team. I probably won't take them. Um, I might land on a team like Purdue or UCLA or Gonzaga even. Uh, and Yeah, so I might kind of go there. And so yeah, I would kind of look and see which teams are like the highest, give me the highest probability of winning based on this. And so that's what I would do. Now, with five brackets, what I'm going to do is kind of go through and try and make sure I have that allocation. So again, um, Houston, they're not really overbought. They have the highest percentage of winning, and so I'm going to go with Houston. I'll delete this one. I'm going to go with Houston. Alabama overbought. A lot of people will be picking them, so I'm going to skip them. Purdue slightly overbought. I might have them in my West Coast pool because a lot of people there aren't going to pick them. UCLA is a liability, and also uh, I can see a lot of people picking them, especially in the West Coast pool, so I'm going to skip them. Gonzaga is a good one. I'll use them in my Midwest pool or my national pool. Um, and then um, let me let me see. Oh, also, what I'm trying to do is get three number ones, a two, and a three. Um, however, sorry, Texas is a good one. I'll go with Texas, and also I'll probably go with Arizona as my last one. Now these are two number ones, two number twos, and a number three. So of course it doesn't follow the allocation precisely, but again, like the allocation is kind of an approximation. I'll try and get close to there. So what I'm going to do is put Houston in either in probably my West Coast bracket, just because I know some of the Midwest folks are going to take them, and I'll also put Purdue in that one as well. Um, I'll put Texas in the Midwest one, and also Arizona. Again, I'm going to try and avoid putting Arizona in the West Coast bracket because I know a lot of people there are going to take them. And then nationally, I'm going to put Gonzaga because in a national bracket or like a big giant pool like through the sports books, they're going to need to kind of get very creative and really kind of fade the public there. And so Gonzaga is a good team for to take as a three seed in the national champion in a national bracket, or I'm just trying to throw a Hail Mary or something. Um, and then the other thing I'm going to try and do is, or then what I'll do after that is literally just fill it in. So the first two brackets are the Midwest ones, and then after that it's the West Coast ones and then the national one. And so I'm just going to go with Texas, push them forward. Uh, Followed by Arizona. Followed by Houston, and then Purdue, and then after that it's going to be Gonzaga in the national bracket here. So, okay. So now I've picked my national champions. And now I need to get to my runner-ups. And so I'm going to look and see uh, what the allocations are. So I've already used two of the 5-2-2 and then something else. I've already used two number ones, two number twos, uh, and a number three. And so I'm going to need three number ones, two, sorry, three number ones, two number, th- uh, two number ones, one number two, and sorry, three number ones, um, one number three, and one something else. And so that's what I'm going to try and figure out. And now, of course, the pinnacle, they don't have anything for runner ups. And so what I'm going to do now is just kind of go to models. Like I mentioned, I kind of blend them, but just for the purpose of this, I'm just gonna go to go to a pinnacle here. Sorry, I'm going to use 538 as my model, and yeah, and then I'm just going to kind of see which are the top modeled out teams to make the championship. And so there's Houston, Alabama, and Purdue as my number one seeds. We have Texas, Arizona, UCLA, Marquette in order as my number twos, which we're going to skip. We have Gonzaga as a three, Baylor as a three. Um, and so what I'm going to try and do is find a little bit of a balance between some variety, but also maybe doubling up. So, for example, if I need another number three, um, then I might just use Gonzaga again. And if I want to go something else, I mentioned this before, I'll go UConn. And so I'm going to, pick UConn. Probably avoid them in the Midwest bracket. I'll probably go with them in the national bracket because, again, I'm trying to throw some Hail Marys over there. And a four seed is a good one. So if I could actually fit them, which I don't know if I can because of I think they're on the same side of the bracket um, as Gonzaga, which they are. And so I'll skip putting them there. I'll maybe put them in uh, in the West Coast bracket. Maybe as a runner-up to Purdue. I'll put them here. Um, and then I mentioned I'll try and double up on Gonzaga. Um, throw that in the Midwest bracket. So I might have. I can't do it over here because again, I have Texas coming out of that side of the bracket, and so I might have to do it here against Arizona. So I'll just push them forward. And then and then from there, I mentioned I want three number ones, and so I'll just kind of look and see where I can get my number ones. Uh, here's either Purdue or Alabama. I'll go with Purdue. Um, and then here, I filled that one out. My two finalists. I want to get Kansas in there somewhere, and which I can't because I filled it out. So the reason why I said I wanted to get Kansas is because again, Kansas is somewhat highly rated. They are a liability, but that's to win the national championship, and not a liability necessarily to make the Final Four or to make the championship game. And so, if I could, I'll try and fit Kansas in, but that side of the bracket's already accounted for. Um, here, this is a Midwest bracket. No, sorry, there's a West Coast bracket. So I might, push Alabama through. Again, like they might be highly picked, but if they go on a little bit of a ride, I do kind of want to take advantage of that. Um, so that one's filled out. That one's filled out. Um, I think this one's an extra bracket actually. Um, and then, so which ones are not filled out? Oh, this one. And so I needed, just kind of another um, another team. So I'm just gonna again go to the models. Marquette is one. They're highly rated. They're a 2 seed. I haven't put them anywhere. I do want to kind of, again, if Marquette goes on a run, then I do want to take that into account. Um, Now what I need to do is figure out my tiebreaker score, and there is a method to this actually. And here, what I would do is go to Ken Palm or Bart Torvik, and there's a very simple formula that you can use to approximate what a score should be, either in total um, or as or the individual scores. Now, the tiebreakers on ESPN and other sites, they actually just look at the total score, even if they have you put in a score. And so that's kind of what I'm focusing on. And so for that bracket, we had Marquette and Gonzaga. And so for this, I'm just going to use Ken Palm. What we want to look at is the adjusted tempo, offensive tempo for each of the teams, the defensive tempo for each of the teams, and we also want to look at their adjusted offensive and defensive efficiencies, and then also we want to look at their tempo. And the formula is this. Let me just uh, um, make some changes here for a Marquette Gonzaga matchup. So in this little box right here, I'm just going to fill out the offensive, defensive efficiencies and the pace for each one. And so for Marquette, it's 119.4 and 97.5. For Gonzaga, it is 124 and 99.7. Marquette's pace is 68.3, and Gonzaga's is 70. And so, what are all these numbers? Well, the offensive and defensive efficiencies are essentially their points per 100 possessions. The pace is their number of possessions. And so, we got that for each of the teams. And now, how do we actually figure it out for a game between the two? So first, we want to take the the uh, we need to figure out how many possessions are going to be in the game. And to do that, what we do is we multiply the pace for each teams together, which is 68.3 and 70, and then we divide that by the average pace in an NCAA game. And so that's 68.3 times 70 divided by 67.3 gives us 71 points in a game. Then what we want to do is we want to figure out how many points each team will score in 100 possessions. So to do that for Marquette, we multiply their offensive efficiency by Gonzaga's defensive efficiency, and then divide it by the NCAA average. And then we'll do the reverse for Gonzaga. So that gives us 114 for Marquette and about 116 for Gonzaga. And then what we'll do is we'll just take that and multiply it by uh, the actual pace that we've determined for this game and just divide it by 100. And so that gives us a score of 81 for Marquette and 82 for Gonzaga. And so what I would do is in my bracket here, for my tiebreaker, I'll put 82 to 81. So if Marquette and Gonzaga do play, we should expect the books to put out a line of around Gonzaga -1 and a total of a 163. It's not going to be exact, but it's going to be in the ballpark. And what we're trying to do is we're not trying to cap a game to make a total bet. We're just trying to get a tiebreaker that's going to be relatively close to the line that the books are going to put out. So, for example, if you did this for tonight's Arizona Nevada game, it'll show something like the formula will give you something like 133 or 134. The actual line, at least the last time I checked, was like 133 or 133 and a half. And so it's going to be close. And this does make a difference. So in this game, your competition might have a score of like 70 to 68, just something off the top of their head. Um, and so now that score of 138 is going to be relatively off from like a total score that the books are going to put out of like 160. And so just by getting 163, you're going to have a much better shot at winning. So for example, for me, a couple years ago, I had Baylor over Gonzaga, and my score was like 2 or 3 points off of the. It was a little bit. I think it was 2 or 3 points lower than the actual total that the books put out. And my closest competitor, I was in a tie with him, put out some random, like some way off score. And the actual score of the game was 2 points off of the score that I put out. And so if there was a tie, that would have made a difference. And so use that equation to actually get to a score that is pretty close to what we expect a score in this game to be. Um, and then finally, from here, what I would do is then cap out the final four games, or like the other four final four teams. And so again, I'm going to look at this allocation. I've already picked 5 number 1 seeds, 2 twos, 2 threes, and a 4. So now here, what I'm going to look for is like 3 number 1s, 2 number 2s. I'm still done with my number 3s. One more number 4, a 5, an 8, and 11. Because for some reason we have a lot of 8s and 11s making the final four. Like we have a few 11s. We had Loyola, we had VCU. For 8s, we had North Carolina last year. So 8s, for some reason, they kind of make it. And so now I'm going to look at Pinnacle's odds, which again we have here on the odds analysis at the regional markets. And so here, let's just look at number 8s. We have Memphis at 4.5%. We have Arkansas at 3.6. We have Maryland at 2.7, and we have Iowa at 2.5. And so the most likely number 8 team to make it per Pinnacle, which again is the sharpest book, is going to be Memphis. And so I'm going to take Memphis in one of my brackets. Maybe it's a national bracket, just because again I need something there, but I can't because I already have Marquette, and so I'm just going to look to see where do I have a South region open, and here's one that I have open. Now I want to consider, do I want to put it in my West Coast bracket? Yeah, because they're going to kind of trend more West Coast teams. And so I'll go with Memphis here. I need an 11 seed. My 11s are going to be Providence 1.9, Arizona State 1.1, NC State 1.8, and Pittsburgh at 1. Now, what I'll probably do for this is wait for this game to end tonight and just do a little bit of a refresh and to see if like one of the first 4 teams kind of has a better percentage than NC State. Otherwise, yeah, I will go NC State, but again, that's a South region. So I need to see if I have a South region open, which I do here. Sorry, East. Sorry, they're South. Here we go. Yeah, I need to see if I have a South region open, which I do here. So yeah, I'll go NC State here. And so I'll continue to do that and just kind of fill out each of my Final Four teams. And then I'll continue to look at my allocations and see, okay, you know what? As I move back, I'll fill out my Elite Eight, whatever is left. But you know what? I've already picked my number 1 seed from my Elite Eight. So now I'm going to start looking for a 10 seed to send to the Elite Eight and a 9 seed and whatnot. And for that, I'll start looking at the models again because because Pinnacle doesn't offer odds on that. Um, and so yeah, that's kind of how I will fill out my brackets, kind of going backwards, just looking at the regions I have open. And finally, the last thing I'll do is fill out the first round. Um, and yeah, because the first round, remember, the first round is only worth um, 32 points in itself. And so I don't really care too much about it when the entire champion is worth 32 points. So, for example, right, like if you had St. Peter's last year and you got it right, them right going to the Elite Eight, you would have only gotten 7 points. And if you had Duke winning the title and all your opponents had Kansas, or a few of them did, they're the ones who would have won. They wouldn't have even though you got St. Peter's right, that was cool. But it's those guys who would have been walking away with the money. And so I always prioritize, that champion. I kind of look at it as like a futures ticket as well. Like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm getting better odds on a team that I like a Houston or something like that, um, than uh, than I am in the market. And so, yeah, I'll kind of consider that as well. Also, by kind of taking, you know, some of these teams here that have the highest percentage of winning, you know what? Like, if you have 15% for Houston and 9.6 for Bama and 6% for Purdue, if you just take them and like, or you skip Bama but you take Purdue, and because if Bama wins, you're not going to win anyway, probably. But if you take a Houston, a Purdue, you skip Kansas as a liability, then now all of a sudden you've given yourself a 1 in 4 shot or so, or 1 in 3 of actually getting the champion right, and almost in some ways a 1 in 3 chance of actually being in the money or winning. And so that's kind of why I like to take a look at that as well. And then also it keeps your bracket alive for longer. And so then you could use the betting market to start hedging and stuff like that. And so yeah. Um, just answering a couple questions now. So Sean, I have not capped the 8-9 games yet. I just need to look through the liabilities and also look through uh, look uh, just refresh myself on the sharp action there. So I haven't capped them out yet. I'll respond to you as soon as I do. And Vince, yeah, I do think that that's a good Final Four. And here's why. Let's just kind of go region by region. Number one is it's a good mix. So that's good. But number two, um, we have Purdue, which has a 25% chance of winning their region. So that's a good one. Um, Texas, or let's go to Texas's region, which is the Midwest. Um, they have a good one. However, they are a team that the Sharps are on, and a team that's a good outcome for the books, and they're like a really good 2 seed. Um, then Connecticut as a 4 is a team that I'm high on. They have one of the best odds in that region. What's interesting is that region, the West, all the top four teams basically are priced around the same. So they're all very close, and everybody's going with Kansas and UCLA, and so nobody's really going with UConn to come out of that region, and so I think that's a good one. And then finally Arizona, I think uh, that's the region with Bama, and again Bama I think is kind of over indexed, and so I think Arizona has a good shot to upset them. Um, and so, or even if they get upset earlier, Bama does, then Arizona has a good shot to come out of that region. And so I think it's a very strong Final Four. Um, you're not gonna get all four, but you should get a few of them, and depending on who you have winning, I think it'll put you in a really good position to win your pool. So that's all I had. Again, thank you for joining. We'll be doing more of these. We might even have some live betting during the tournament as well. So appreciate you joining, and if you have any other questions, I'll just stay on for a little bit longer to answer them. Um, but if not, then enjoy the the tournament. I'm gonna check the score of this game right now. Um, it's Farley Dickinson game, and then also see if Arizona State is or Nevada if they're in need, because that game is going to be coming up here in a little bit here. All right. I'm gonna hop off, but if you have any questions, just DM me.